Is this a mistake? That is a definite maybe.
Greetings and salutations, friends. My name is Ariana, and today I will be doing the second part of my new series talking about a movie while doing a thing that correlates to that movie. It's a working title. Today I am going to be dyeing my hair green. It used to be that color, and it's definitely not anymore. So I was trying to think what movie I could tie this into, and what is better than one of my favorite movies that I mentioned last video, Ghost World, where she literally impulsively dyes her hair green. So I'm gonna dye my hair while I talk about my favorite things in this movie. Some things I want to cover are the awful truth that adulthood is pathetic and the fear of the average, cynicism in the character of Enid, and consumerism and alienation. And then maybe I'll talk about what Ghost World means to me. So in case you don't know, Ghost World is about this character named Enid, and she just graduated high school with her best friend Rebecca. But as she begins to wander around in the post-grad world, she's not really sure where she wants to go, if she's ready to do what everyone else is doing, like get a job and go to college. And it's just about her struggle in trying to feel like she belongs and to know what she wants to do. So let's get started. I'm super nervous for this. I don't even know where to begin.
It's semi-permanent hair dye. I will be using the Arctic Fox green dye in Phantom Green. So if it sucks, I swear that's probably not a reflection of the brand. It's definitely me.
Wow. Wouldn't you take analysis seriously from this woman?
Screw it.
So like I said, I want to talk about how Ghost World portrays adulthood as being this very pathetic experience. And the most obvious example of this is Seymour. The girls are literally introduced to Seymour by his pathetic ad in the newspaper asking for a woman he saw at an airport. He's bitter, and he shares an apartment with another grown man. He's also a complete nerd for vinyl records, but this is endearing actually. It doesn't come across as entirely pretentious, and that's why Enid is attracted to being his friend in the first place. As Enid learns to find him endearing, she describes him as the exact opposite of everything she hates. When the two of them have a falling out, and she reconnects with him at the end of the film, Enid reassures him that she doesn't find him to be a dork or pathetic, but rather a muse, as she literally draws him in her notebook all the time. However, the film ends with Seymour seeing a therapist and his mom coming to pick him up asking him what he wants for dinner. To directly quote himself, his life basically went to shit, though he was never really given an exceptional one to begin with. He's worked at the same place for 20 years and shows no real enthusiasm for it. He can't really talk to women, and as he says himself, after failing to have a conversation with an attractive woman who really wasn't the woman for him anyway, he says he can't relate to 99% of humanity, and that's kind of an iconic quote of the film. So what kind of example of adulthood is this for a young girl who's just entered the world of adulthood? Maybe an accurate one.
You know what? This is mainly for the content at this point. This hair dyeing is just decorative.
So let's take a look at the other adult characters in the film. So when Enid is given her diploma, it says that she has failed an art class and she needs to go retake it. And so she goes to retake it over the summer, and her art teacher is introduced to be this very quirky character. Her introduction follows after she plays her hilariously ridiculous and unironic short film, Mirror, Father, Mirror. It's really bad. So one funny little thing given to us by the directors is after she plays her short film, Mirror, Father, Mirror, the credits show, I guess, the sponsors, and in that we get the Federation for the Advancement of Mature Women in the Arts, the Struggling Artists Foundation, and the Why Not Me Project. We as an audience laugh at her and her illusory teaching. She is constantly rewarding meaningless, mediocre art pieces in the class that are just disguised as profound social commentary. Though she eventually does come to see Enid's potential as an artist and even offers her a scholarship to an art academy, Enid is disappointed by this adult in her life when she cannot give her a passing grade in the class after a controversy ensued from an art piece that Enid submitted for the museum. At the end of the day, this art teacher is given no respect as a real artist and is in fact just a naive observer. Another excellent example of pathetic adulthood in the film is Enid's own father, who can't even have a real conversation with her. Though Enid's usual deadpan delivery does stand as an obstacle in their conversation, he doesn't really try all that hard to make it work, seemingly intimidated by his own daughter. When Enid rejects the proposal given to him on behalf of his girlfriend offering Enid a job, he stammers and awkwardly leaves the room. And when Enid is crying on her bed after a fight between her and Rebecca, he asks her what's wrong and then quickly changes the subject and telling her that he hopes she's in a good mood because he has important news, which is just that he wants his girlfriend, who Enid hates, to move in with them. Enid and her father lack a personal connection that neither one of them tries to fix. But her father never confronts what could be actually hurting his daughter. He doesn't try to understand her. When she says she doesn't want to go to college, he tries to convince her to maybe go. Her main example of adulthood is a man who doesn't do enough as a father and acts like a child around her. Yo, I hope my hairstylist doesn't watch this video. She's gonna be really disappointed in me. She's gonna never talk to me again. And we're family friends. This pathetic framing around adulthood is only manifested more so through the character of Enid herself and her reactions towards her friend Rebecca as the film progresses. Rebecca, from the start of the film, is eager to start her adult life. When Rebecca says it's such a weird feeling to have graduated high school, Enid says, yeah, it hasn't really hit me yet, already introducing that Rebecca is seemingly ahead of Enid in terms of acceptance of graduating and moving forward. Meanwhile, Enid stays stagnant. Throughout the film, Rebecca shows initiative in trying to search for an apartment for her and Enid to move into. Meanwhile, Enid makes excuses for not finding a job and being involved in the apartment process. But Rebecca's assimilation into adulthood isn't exactly praised by the film, but rather mocked and exposed, especially when it showcases the reality of working and how it means dealing with annoying customers, and also being excited about a pull-out ironing board. At one point, Enid tells Seymour, Jesus, I'd go nuts if I had to work in an office all day. This is a sentiment felt by high schoolers in general as they have to decide what career they want to devote the next 4 years to. Enid has a fear of the average. And this manifests brilliantly when she is looking at an apartment with Rebecca. And Enid says this is such a weird neighborhood, and Rebecca tells her this is a totally normal average neighborhood. And after they kind of have a little bit of a fight, Enid mockingly says, I can't wait to live in some depressing shithole in the middle of nowhere. The film shows through Enid's eyes that graduating high school means losing your identity and becoming average, which Enid is not quite ready to do. When Enid visits Rebecca at the coffee shop where she has just started to work, Rebecca tells her, you'll see, you'll get sick of all the creeps and weirdos and losers too. Enid replies with, but those are our people. And Rebecca just says, yeah, well, dismissing her, and then immediately saying, so when are you gonna get a job? Once again, connecting adulthood with the need and prioritization to find a job at the expense of identity and a sense of humor. It is Enid listening to an old record that she had as a kid with a little girl singing, so I'll be special and I'll be rare to be a girl they notice, that finally pushes her to decide not to move in with Rebecca and avoid Seymour, but instead go on her own and once again rebel against the average. Her and Rebecca's differences are solidified in their wardrobe in their final scene together, when Enid wears a shirt she wore previously in the movie and boots that her and Rebecca both wore to graduation. Meanwhile, Rebecca wears loafers and a work uniform with a sweater on top. Enid's views that adulthood leads to a pathetic existence culminate into the character of Norman. Norman is a man who sits on a bus bench for a bus that will never come because it is out of service. One night, she sits next to him and says, you're like the only person in this world I can count on, because no matter what, I know you'll always be here. So now the second point I want to cover is cynicism in Enid, and what cynicism as a philosophy is and how it connects to Enid's character. I think one of the reasons Enid spoke to me so much as a character was because of her cynicism. I even put her on my graduation cap. However, Ghostwell does not treat Enid as some pseudo-intellectual, miserable, angsty teenager, but rather a genuine person who has a sincere dissatisfaction and dislike towards her environment. In the TED Talk, The Philosophy of Cynicism, William D. Desmond The narrator says, in exile, Diogenes, regarded as the father of cynicism, decided that by rejecting the opinion of others and societal measures of success, he could truly be free. Enid, from the beginning of the film, is constantly rejecting people's opinions. It's literally the reason why she dyes her hair green, right after Rebecca says that they should buy expensive outfits and convince tenants in apartments they look at that they're rich yuppies. How am I supposed to do this if I can't even get the glove on? Throughout the movie, she mocks her valedictorian speech and graduation in school in general. She feels no attraction to the men around her, telling Rebecca, I just hate all these extroverted, obnoxious, pseudo-bohemian losers. Diogenes was also said to have mocked passerby and teased authorities, which Enid quite literally does with Rebecca. It's like their favorite pastime. And when it comes to societal measures of success, as the quote says, Enid is also doing this, deciding not to go to college, not to get a job, not to do the norm, what everyone else is doing. Ultimately, she doesn't even graduate high school. In the TED Talk, it says this is all done to truly be free, which I feel is completely and beautifully encapsulated in the ending of the film. This is when Enid gets on the bus to go somewhere new. Enid is a cynic, but that doesn't have to be a bad thing. In his piece, In Praise of Cynicism, Julian Baggini says that cynicism is the lifeblood of satirical comedy, which Ghostworld so brilliantly understands. He goes on to say that the contemporary cynic cuts through the crap and sees things as they really are. And that is exactly what Enid does. She sees the bullshit of the art world, the boredom of the career world, and the annoying optimism of the blind youth. And she wants nothing to do with it. As Baggini says, we need intelligent cynicism, as it is a searchlight for the truly positive, which I believe Enid is in search of when she gets on that bus at the end of the movie. So the next point I want to cover is the way Ghostworld depicts consumerism in America and how that relates to isolation. Now, this is kind of a heavy analysis on its own. I'm not going to dig too deep into it because it's not really what I want to cover in this video and how I want it to tie together, but I will touch upon it because it does deal with alienation. But I like that Ghostworld incorporates iconic corporations like McDonald's and Nike to further reinforce this idea of alienation. It's like when Seymour is talking to Enid and is saying how it's hard for him to connect with other people. He says, it's simple for everybody else. You give them a Big Mac and Nikes and they're happy. This is the second time Nike is mentioned in the film, as earlier when Rebecca is pointing out this supposedly weird comedian because he has a very dark sense of humor. Enid says, if he's so weird, why is he wearing Nikes? So once again, it's this image of isolation depicted through, well, criticized through popular consumerist items. When Enid finally sees Seymour's music record room, she says it's his dream room, but he hates it, criticizing it, even saying you can't connect with people so you just fill your life with stuff. And this just ties into the message of the film perfectly, which says, we as a consumer culture lack intimacy and connection. In an interview with a stranger, Daniel Clowes, who wrote the comic book that the movie is based on and the screenplay, said, we tried to make the streets intentionally empty, so you see the signage and storefronts, but there's nobody there. It captures this weird feeling of alienation in the endless modern consumer culture that's omnipresent in every part of America. So I really like how the film ties in Enid's alienation and just ultimately alienation in general with this sort of consumer mindset in America. Also, some random thing I love about Ghostworld is how it casually establishes the sexuality of Enid and Rebecca. When they're following these people they think are Satanists, they say, what do Satanists even do? Sacrifice virgins, I guess. And then Rebecca says, well, that leaves us in the clear, I think. She says something like that. And I love that. And then later on in the movie, Enid says that she's sexually frustrated, and Rebecca tells her she obviously has not discovered masturbation. I like that it doesn't glamorize her sexuality or make it this big deal. It's just there. They're not virgins. This is an American Pie. We're not worried about them. They're chilling. The funny thing is, Ghostworld isn't in my top 5 favorite movies. It's definitely in my top 10. But the reason I chose to put Ghostworld out of all movies in the history of the world on my graduation cap was because of how perfectly it said everything I was feeling as I was about to graduate. I felt just like Enid. Even though I definitely hated parts of high school, I wasn't ready to say goodbye to it. It reminded me, there's a really good scene in Ghost World when Enid and Rebecca are at their graduation party. And Enid sees this weird kid, Daniel, and tells Rebecca, wow, we're probably never going to see him again. And Rebecca's super casual about it, saying like how that's a good thing. And Enid says, it's actually totally depressing. And the camera lingers on her as she just watches this kid who she's never going to see again. And I feel like so many coming-of-age movies don't focus on the sadness of graduating high school. But when you are constantly given mediums and forms of art that say that high school is the best time of your life and then you graduate, you don't feel like you're headed towards a good time. Post-graduation, like Rebecca, everyone seemed to have their shit together. They were going off to the universities and posting all these cool pictures and having a great time, and I felt like I was the only one who was freaking out about barreling towards adulthood and everything that four-letter word meant. Being cynical was a way to stay above it all, because if I stay detached from something, it can't hurt me, right? Another reason that Enid just connected with me so deeply is when she decides to sell all her things at a garage sale, instead of getting a job. Rebecca sees a hat that she's selling and says, this is from your little old lady phase. I myself went through a lot of phases in high school, and it's a really good way to feel like you have no sense of identity. But here was Enid, and she had gone through it all too. She was mean, and she was scared, and she was an artist, and I saw myself in her. And as we watch the ending where Enid gets on that bus and rides away, the pessimist will say she killed herself. The optimist will say she found perfect happiness. And me, the cynic, will say she was just in search of something real. So I'm just going to finish this up right now, and I'll cut to the finished product, which I am very scared to see. While I thought to do its thing, the reason I think it matters that Ghost World does tackle adulthood in this really cynical point of view that frames it as being this pathetic experience is because sometimes it is, and I think that's everyone's secret fear. Maybe life isn't always as fulfilling as it seems, but not because it's inherently that way. You would inherently have to be miserable and have to suffer. I think it's just a matter of going after what you want and not losing yourself in the process. So Enid is after something because she is not ready to be like Rebecca and just assimilate. She wants to stay who she is while still being an adult. And I think that's something that young people often forget. We forget that we can hold on and cherish to the things that defined our youth while still being mature adults who pursue the things that we love, who pursue careers that we love, who try to make honest human connection. That's what we have to do. We have to do what these adults in the film don't do, which is try to connect, try to find who you connect with, to not build up walls, to not be naive, to not deal with the bullshit, and just confront life. And that's what Enid wants to do. So, this is the finished product. It's obviously a 1977 original punk rock look.